It started with a sudden silence. I had been so used to the hum of my life, the sound of the refrigerator, the distant noise from the street, the whir of the air conditioning. Even the small sounds of the house settling were comforting. But today, everything fell off, like the entire world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I'd spent the afternoon at home, lounging on the couch and half watching a show, mindlessly scrolling through my phone. My wife, Lila, had gone out with some friends for a spa day, and I had decided to take the day for myself. The house was calm, quiet, almost too quiet. It was around 4 p.m. when I heard it, a soft knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I wasn't sure who it could be, but my curiosity got the best of me, so I paused the TV and got up. There was no delivery scheduled, no friends visiting, just this sudden, unexpected knock. I walked to the door, peering through the peephole. A stranger stood outside. A woman, dressed casually in a black jacket and jeans, holding a small bag in her hand. Her appearance was unremarkable, but something about her presence sent an unexpected jolt through me. I hesitated for a moment. Should I open the door? I didn't recognize her, and I wasn't used to people knocking on my door without any notice. But the curiosity was overwhelming. Something in her demeanor didn't seem like a typical stranger. She didn't have that hesitant, lost look of someone unsure of where they were. No, this woman was confident, purposeful. I opened the door a crack, just enough to hear her. "Hello," she said, her voice smooth and calm. "I know this may sound strange, but I'm looking for someone who might be staying here." I blinked, taken aback. "I'm sorry, but I think you have the wrong house." She smiled slightly, but there was a coldness behind it. "Maybe, but I don't think so. You're the only one here right now, right?" I stepped back, instinctively feeling the urge to shut the door, but something in her gaze kept me from doing so. Her eyes didn't look threatening. If anything, they were too calculating, too intense. "Who are you looking for?" I asked, my voice now betraying a hint of unease. "I don't think I should be the one explaining," she said, her smile fading. "But let's just say that the person I'm looking for has been avoiding me. I'm hoping you can help me find them." I stared at her for a moment, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. Who was this woman? What did she mean? Someone I could help her find. My mind was racing, trying to piece together any logical explanation, but nothing made sense. I wasn't exactly the kind of person who got caught up in mysterious situations. Still, I felt a strange pull, as if the moment was meant to happen. She wasn't just a random person showing up at my door. It felt orchestrated, like the universe had brought her to this precise spot, at this precise time. "What are you talking about?" I finally asked, my voice firmer now. "I don't know anyone you might be looking for." She seemed to consider my response for a second before speaking again, her voice lower, almost a whisper. "I'm sure you don't. But I do know something about you. Something about your life that you've been hiding, something that only someone close to you would know." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. What did she mean? Who was this person? She must have seen my shock because she stepped back, as if giving me space to process. "I'm sorry to intrude," she said, suddenly sounding almost apologetic. "But this is something that needs to be addressed. The longer we wait, the more dangerous it gets." Dangerous? My head spun. Was she threatening me? Before I could respond, she took a step back, her eyes narrowing. "I'll be back later," she said cryptically. "You'll have to make a choice. Either you open the door, or, well, let's just say the consequences might be worse than you think." And with that, she turned and walked away. I stood there, stunned, my hand still gripping the door. What had just happened? What did she mean by all that? Dangerous? What choice was she talking about? I closed the door slowly, locking it behind me. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion. I felt a strange mix of dread and curiosity. But the worst part was that I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, was pulling at the strings of my life, and I had no idea what the endgame was. I picked up my phone, checking the time. Lila hadn't texted or called to let me know she was on her way home yet. It was as if the universe had decided to throw me into some twisted game where I was the only player. I didn't know it at the time, but that knock on my door would be the beginning of something much bigger. The choice she spoke of? It was one I would soon have to face, whether I was ready or not. The silence of the house had returned. But I knew, deep down, that things would never be the same. Not after this. The next few hours were a blur. I paced the house, unable to shake the unsettling feeling that had settled deep in my gut after the stranger left. The more I tried to make sense of what had happened, the less I understood. Who was she? Why had she shown up unannounced? And what did she mean by dangerous? I tried to distract myself by doing something, anything, to clear my head. I found myself cleaning the kitchen, scrubbing dishes, wiping countertops, but nothing helped. I felt a sense of unease hanging over me like a heavy cloud. The silence was suffocating. I looked at my phone again. No text from Lila. It wasn't like her to go this long without updating me, especially when she was out with friends. Something about that, too, felt off. I eventually sat back down on the couch, hoping the stillness would help me think. I glanced at the clock. 6:45 p.m. Lila should have been home by now. I checked my phone one more time, but there was still nothing. I texted her, "Hey, everything okay? When are you coming back?" and pressed send, though I already had the sinking feeling that she wouldn't respond. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. It was a notification for an unread message, but it wasn't from Lila. It was from an unknown number. The message read, "I hope you're not thinking of ignoring this. I will be watching." I stared at the screen, my breath catching in my throat. The words felt like a warning, a challenge, the type of message that anyone would consider a threat. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I put the phone down, my hands trembling. The whole situation felt like a twisted puzzle, one where the pieces didn't quite fit, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't see the full picture. I stood up, pacing again, trying to wrap my mind around it. Who could be sending me these messages? What did the woman at the door want? My thoughts swirled. It was impossible to ignore the eerie calmness that had come over me in the past few hours. The house felt less like my home and more like a stage, where some unseen force was pulling all the strings. I finally tried calling Lila. The phone rang for what felt like an eternity before it went to voicemail. "Hey, it's Lila. I'm probably just busy or my phone's off. I'll call you back later." Her cheerful voice echoed in the silence, completely at odds with the dark thoughts running through my mind. I tried calling again, and again. Nothing. Each time, the ringing continued until the voicemail picked up. I grabbed my jacket and decided to go out for a walk. Fresh air, a change of scenery, anything to break the cycle of anxiety that had taken over me. But just as I reached for the door, I stopped. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. There it was again, that feeling of being watched. It was so strong now, like someone was right behind me, waiting for me to make my move. I turned around quickly, but of course, no one was there. The house was still quiet. Then, my eyes landed on something strange. On the coffee table, where I'd left my phone just minutes before, was a small envelope. I hadn't noticed it there before. It was thin, almost too thin to contain anything of importance. I felt my pulse quicken. I walked over to the table and hesitated, wondering if it had been there all along or if someone had placed it while I wasn't looking. The handwriting on the envelope was unfamiliar, clean, and precise, just like the woman's voice from earlier. I picked it up, slowly tearing the top open. Inside was a small piece of paper, folded neatly in half. I unfolded it, and my stomach churned as I read the single sentence written on the page. "She knows what you've done." My breath caught in my throat. What the hell was this? What had I done? Who was this person, and what were they trying to tell me? My heart started to race. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, and the once familiar comfort of my home now felt alien, as though I were trapped in some kind of nightmare. I tried to make sense of it, but no matter how much I racked my brain, I couldn't think of anything that would have led to this. There were no secrets, no lies, at least, none that I was aware of. And yet, this message, it felt too specific, too purposeful, for it to be random. I glanced back at the door. Had I missed something earlier? Was the woman still out there, watching me? Was she the one who had left the envelope? And what about Lila? Where was she? My phone remained silent. I couldn't help but feel that something had gone terribly wrong. But what? The minutes dragged by, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being drawn into something far bigger than I could understand. A trap, maybe? But who was the trap for? Me? Lila? Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I froze. The sound echoed in the silence of the house, a sharp, jarring noise that made my heart skip a beat. It wasn't Lila. I hadn't heard her car pull into the driveway, and there was no way she would have forgotten her key. I walked cautiously to the door, my body tense with every step. When I looked through the peephole, my breath caught in my chest. It was her again, the woman, standing on my doorstep, looking up at the door with a look of calm determination. Before I could react, she spoke, her voice muffled through the door. "I know you're in there. I'm not leaving until we talk." I backed away from the door, my heart racing. How had she found me again? What did she want? I didn't know if I was ready for this conversation, whatever it was. But deep down, I knew I had no choice. The game had already begun, and there was no turning back. I stood there for a few moments, staring at the door as if hoping the stranger would simply vanish. The sound of my pulse was louder in my ears than the doorbell, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something irreversible was happening. My breath was shallow, and I suddenly felt lightheaded. It wasn't just the anxiety, it was a deep, visceral sense of being completely out of control. The woman's voice came again, calm but insistent. "I know you can hear me. You've been avoiding this, but you can't anymore. It's time for the truth." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to turn away, lock the door, pretend none of this had ever happened. But the other part of me, the part one couldn't ignore, felt an undeniable pull. What did she know? What truth was she talking about? And why had she come for me now? I took a deep breath and walked over to the door, my hand trembling slightly as I reached for the doorknob. I had to see her. I had to know what this was about. The worst part wasn't the threat. It wasn't even the strange, cryptic messages. It was the overwhelming sense that I was being forced into something that I didn't understand. The truth? What truth? I wasn't even sure who I was anymore in this strange scenario. I opened the door, slowly, just a crack, not fully revealing myself yet. But she was already looking right at me, her eyes sharp and knowing, as if she'd expected me to open it at that very moment. "Good," she said, her voice low but purposeful. "We can finally talk." I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. "Who are you?" The words came out before I could stop them. The question felt foolish, considering she had already been inside my life for days now. But it was the only thing I could ask. The woman smiled, though it wasn't a friendly smile. It was more like a smile of recognition, like she knew something about me that I didn't. "You already know who I am," she replied cryptically. "But we're getting ahead of ourselves." She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving mine. Her proximity sent a chill down my spine. I took an instinctual step back, but she followed me, closing the gap without hesitation. "I'm here because of the choices you've made. You might think they've been small, insignificant, but they've led to this moment. You can't avoid it anymore." I was stunned, speechless. Every word she spoke felt like a puzzle piece, and with each sentence, I could feel the pieces shifting into place, but the picture they were forming was one I didn't recognize. Was she talking about something in my past? A mistake I'd made? I managed to speak again, this time more firmly. "What are you talking about? I don't know who you are, and I don't know what you want from me." She didn't flinch. "I'm here to make sure you face the consequences of those choices, whether you like it or not." Her gaze flickered briefly to the side, and for a split second, I saw something in her eyes, something that made my stomach drop. It was almost as if she was pitying me. "I don't understand," I muttered, my voice thick with confusion. "What consequences? What do you want me to do?" She sighed, almost like she was tired of explaining something so simple. "The truth is," she said, her voice dropping even lower, "you've been lying to yourself, hiding things from those closest to you. And those lies, they never stay hidden for long." I could feel the blood draining from my face. The room felt like it was spinning. What lies? What was she talking about? The only thing I could think of was Lila. Could it be something about her? About our marriage? But nothing seemed to add up. We had no secrets, no deep issues that I was aware of. Or at least, I thought so. "You're wrong," I said, trying to stand my ground. "There's nothing I've been hiding." She leaned in a little closer, her voice almost a whisper now. "You may not realize it, but you've been keeping something from her. Something that she will find out, whether you're ready or not." I stepped back, the weight of her words settling into my chest like a stone. My mind raced to make sense of this, to find something that would explain the sudden tension between us, the strange messages, and now this woman standing at my door like she was some kind of oracle revealing my darkest secrets. Before I could speak again, she raised a hand, signaling for me to stay quiet. "I didn't come here to make you feel guilty. I came because the time has come. Your choices will catch up to you. They always do." I stood there, frozen, my heart beating too fast to keep up with the chaos in my head. There had to be some mistake. But deep down, I knew she wasn't lying. There was something buried under the surface that was now being dragged into the light, whether I was ready for it or not. A sharp knock at the door interrupted the moment. I glanced over at her, my eyes wide. Who else could it be? Was this some kind of test? I turned back to her. Who else is here? My voice was hoarse now, a mix of fear and disbelief. She simply shook her head. You'll see for yourself. I took a step toward the door, but before I could reach it, the woman's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. Her grip was tight, unyielding. Don't answer it yet, she warned, her tone sharp, her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity one hadn't seen before. It's not just a visitor. It's part of the puzzle. And if you open this door, there's no turning back. I looked down at her hand on my wrist, then back at the door, the knock growing louder, more urgent. I didn't know what to do. The door seemed like the only escape from the chaos that was consuming me, but the way she was holding me back made it clear that opening it would change everything. I took a deep breath and made my decision. I had no choice but to face whatever was waiting on the other side. I couldn't breathe. The pressure in my chest felt unbearable as the woman's grip tightened around my wrist. My mind was racing in 1,000 directions, trying to process the words she had just spoken, trying to make sense of the situation that had spun so far out of control. The knock on the door echoed again, louder this time, as if demanding an answer. The woman didn't release my wrist. Her fingers were cold, almost as if they were freezing me in place. There was something unnatural about her presence now, something more terrifying than before. I tried to pull away, but she held me with a quiet, calm force that felt more like an inevitability than a choice. You don't understand, she said, her voice now low, barely a whisper, but with a sense of finality. Answer that door, and it will all begin. There's no going back after this. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to throw open the door and confront whoever was on the other side, but I felt paralyzed. I wasn't just afraid of what might be waiting for me behind that door. I was terrified of what would happen if I didn't open it. But how could I trust the woman standing in front of me? She had shown up unannounced, dropping cryptic warnings like they were some kind of script I was supposed to follow. She let go of my wrist suddenly, as if sensing my hesitation. Her eyes remained locked onto mine, unwavering, intense. You think you're in control, she said, but you're not. Whatever is behind that door will change everything. You'll see things you're not ready to see. I took a step back, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I was no longer sure of what was real. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. There were too many unanswered questions swirling in my head. Who was this woman? Why was she here? And why did she seem to know things about me that I didn't even understand? Another loud knock rattled the door, and I jumped. I can't just stand here all day, I said, my voice sounding more desperate than I intended. Who's at the door? Who are you? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced toward the door and then back at me, her expression unreadable. You'll find out soon enough, she said, her tone almost regretful, like she wasn't entirely happy with the path she had chosen. Just know that once you open it, you'll have to face the consequences. Don't say I didn't warn you. I didn't know how long I stood there, staring at her, caught between the unknown and the terrifying certainty that opening the door would unlock something I couldn't undo. I felt a deep sense of dread gnawing at me, but there was also something else, something primal, something that pushed me toward the door. Curiosity, a thirst for answers, a need to understand what was happening to me, to my life. Finally, I exhaled sharply, my hand moving toward the door. I didn't know what I was expecting, but I had no choice now. I had to see it through. I couldn't stay in this limbo forever. I reached for the doorknob. The second my fingers touched it, I felt a shiver run down my spine, like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to make the decision. The knock came again, louder and more insistent, as if the person on the other side had known exactly when I would open the door. I hesitated for one last moment, but there was no turning back now. I twisted the doorknob, and the door creaked open slowly, the heavy weight of the moment pressing down on me. My heart thudded in my chest as I stepped back slightly, bracing myself for whatever would come through. And then, there it was, a figure standing in the doorway, almost silhouetted against the fading light of the day. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark coat that seemed out of place for the time of day. His face was shadowed, but I could still make out the outline of his features. The moment I saw him, A chill ran through me. "Good evening," he said, his voice smooth and calm, but there was an unsettling edge to it. His words were precise, almost too perfect. "I believe it's time we spoke." My heart sank. I didn't know who he was, but I already hated the way he spoke, the way he looked at me, like he already knew everything about me, things I had long buried. There was no warmth in his eyes, just cold calculation. "I don't know you," I said, my voice shaking as I tried to sound more confident than I felt. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The man's lips curled into a faint, unsettling smile. "I think you already know the answer to that," he replied cryptically. "But I'm here to help you, to guide you through this." "Guide me," I repeated, barely able to comprehend the words. "Help me with what? I don't even know who you are." The woman standing behind me suddenly spoke up, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Let him in," she said simply, her gaze never leaving the man at the door. I turned to her, confusion flooding my mind. "What? No, I don't know him. I don't know either of you." She didn't flinch. "You don't have a choice," she said. "Not anymore. You opened the door. Now you have to face the truth." I stood there, frozen, as the man at the door took a step forward. He wasn't looking at me now. His gaze was fixed on the woman who had been standing in my living room. There was a strange understanding between them, an unspoken agreement that unsettled me even more than the silence. The man spoke again, his voice now barely more than a whisper, but it was directed at her. "It's time." The woman nodded, then turned to me. "This is where it all starts. From this moment on, you can't go back." I didn't know what was happening or why I had gotten caught up in whatever this was, but as the man stepped over the threshold, my body stiffened in a mixture of fear and disbelief. This was no longer just an odd encounter. This was the beginning of something I couldn't escape from. And deep down, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The door creaked shut behind him with a finality that echoed in my mind. The man stood in the middle of my living room, his presence commanding and suffocating, as if the very air around him thickened with each passing second. I was frozen in place, still reeling from the suddenness of everything. He hadn't even introduced himself, but somehow, I knew it wasn't necessary. He wasn't here to make small talk. He wasn't here for pleasantries. He was here for something far bigger, and now, so was I? The woman, Emily, I was beginning to think her name might be, stepped aside, her eyes never leaving the man. Her face had taken on an expression that was hard to read, one that combined a strange mix of anticipation and dread. She didn't look like someone waiting for a pleasant conversation. She looked like someone bracing for impact, like she already knew the storm was coming. I swallowed hard. "What the hell is going on here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. But it didn't matter. The question hung in the air, unanswered. No one would give me the answers I needed. I was about to learn something much deeper, something that would shatter everything I thought I knew. The man finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "You've been living in the dark for too long, watching your life unfold without ever really understanding the forces shaping it." His eyes flicked to Emily for a brief moment before settling back on me. "And now, it's time for you to open your eyes." I stared at him, struggling to make sense of his words. "What are you talking about?" I said, frustration creeping into my voice. "I'm just a guy, living my life, doing my thing. I don't have anything to do with whatever this is." Emily stepped forward then, finally breaking her silence. "That's the problem," she said, her voice tinged with something I couldn't quite place. "Regret, maybe? You've been a part of something much bigger than you ever realized. And now, you're at the center of it." I shook my head, trying to clear the fog that had settled in my brain. No, I'm not. Whatever this is, it's just a mistake. You're making a mistake." The man raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something like amusement crossing his face, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Mistake? No. This has been set in motion for years. You're just too late to realize it." I took a step back, the walls around me suddenly closing in. "No, this doesn't make any sense. I haven't done anything. I don't even know you, any of you." "That's the first lie," the man said, his tone sharp. "You've been involved with us from the very beginning. You just didn't know it." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. "You think your life has been a series of random events, don't you? A collection of coincidences. Well, you're wrong. Everything has been orchestrated, every decision, every moment, leading to this." I staggered back, my heart racing. The world felt like it was tilting on its axis. My breath became shallow as I struggled to process the words, the implications. How could this be possible? I had lived my life with nothing out of the ordinary. There was no grand conspiracy, no hidden forces pulling my strings. I was just me. The man's eyes softened, but only for a moment. You've been living in the dark, yes. But now, you have a choice. You can keep pretending that you're not a part of something much bigger than yourself, or you can face the truth. The truth of what you've been hiding from, and what you've allowed to happen. I couldn't breathe. The weight of his words pressed down on me, suffocating me. What truth? I asked, my voice cracking under the strain. What are you talking about? Emily spoke again, her voice a quiet contrast to the intensity of the man's presence. It's time for you to stop running from it, she said softly, almost apologetically. We've given you the chance to walk away, but now the time has come to face it. You've been a part of this from the very start. What are you saying? I spat out, my frustration building into something like panic. What the hell is this all about? The man took a slow step toward me, his face now just inches away from mine. The truth, my friend, he said, his breath cold against my skin, is that you are a part of something that cannot be undone. You've been linked to us, bound by secrets you haven't even begun to understand. And now, you have to make a choice. What will you do with that truth? I felt my knees weaken. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought it might burst from my chest. I had no idea what he was talking about, but every fiber of my being knew that this was the moment that would change everything. My life, everything I thought I knew, was about to be upended. And then, in that moment, I realized something that both terrified and fascinated me. It wasn't just a choice I had to make now. It was a decision that would send ripples through the rest of my life, through everything I had built, everything I had taken for granted. It was about to tear open the truth of my existence in ways I wasn't ready for. The man was waiting for me to respond, his eyes piercing through me, and in that silence, I heard the whisper of a choice. It wasn't a choice of whether I could walk away. It was a choice of whether I was ready to know the truth. But I didn't know if I was. I had no idea what it would mean for me. Would I ever be the same again? Could I ever go back to the life I knew? The weight of his words pressed in on me, and I knew, deep down, that there was no going back. Make your choice, the man said, his voice barely more than a murmur. And in that moment, I realized, whatever came next, it wasn't just about me anymore. The truth was coming, and it was going to unravel everything I thought I knew. The storm was here, and there was no escape. I stood there in the suffocating silence, my thoughts crashing together in a chaotic blur. The words the man had spoken rattled in my mind like a drumbeat, echoing louder with every passing second. You've been linked to us. You've been living in the dark. And now you have a choice. What was this? What could it all mean? My life, the ordinary, comfortable existence I had built over the years, had been upended in a matter of hours. These people, this man, this woman, knew things about me that I didn't even know myself. There was no way I could comprehend it. I felt my chest tightening, the air in the room thick with an unseen weight. The woman, Emily, stood back now, watching me closely but not saying a word. Her face, once filled with some kind of regret or pity, had hardened. She was waiting for me to make the inevitable decision. The man, on the other hand, was watching me intently, his eyes dark, filled with something that I could only describe as knowing. He was waiting for me to react, waiting for me to take the next step into whatever dark world they were pulling me into. I felt a surge of frustration rising in my chest. Why me? Why now? I had been just fine, living a quiet life, working my job, spending time with Lila. There was nothing about my life that stood out, nothing that screamed important or destined for something bigger. And yet, here I was, trapped in this nightmare of half-truths and cryptic messages. Look at you. The man finally spoke again, his voice low, almost soothing now. You want to deny it. You want to turn away from the truth. But it's already a part of you, whether you like it or not. You can feel it, that nagging, crawling sensation at the back of your mind. The one that tells you you've always known there's more to your life. More than you've been told. More than you've allowed yourself to believe. I shook my head violently, trying to rid myself of the suffocating feeling that was gripping my chest. More? What more could there possibly be? I'm not one of you. I muttered, more to myself than to them. But my words felt hollow even as they left my lips. I was lying. I had known there was something wrong. There had always been a sense, a deep, gnawing unease I couldn't shake. It had been building, growing inside me for months, and now it was exploding into something I couldn't ignore any longer. The man stepped closer, his presence overpowering. You don't get it. You never have. You've been living in a carefully constructed illusion. Every step you've taken, every decision you've made, it was never entirely yours. Not really. Stop, I said, my voice rising, trying to push him away, trying to make sense of everything that was happening. Stop. This is insane. What are you talking about? I've built my life. I've made my choices. No one made them for me. He smiled then, though it was a smile without warmth. It was the smile of someone who knew more than they should. Someone who had seen the truth and was about to unveil it for the first time. That's where you're wrong, he said, his voice almost tender. You made choices, yes, but they weren't the ones you thought you were making. My knees buckled slightly, and I steadied myself against the edge of the counter. Every part of me screamed to run, to lock myself in a room, to pretend none of this was happening, but I couldn't move. Not now. Not when I was this close to understanding. Emily, who had been silent for what felt like an eternity, finally stepped forward. Her expression softened, though I could see the sadness behind her eyes. You think your life has been about your decisions. But there are forces at play here that are much older than you could ever imagine. Much bigger. And you've been a part of it for much longer than you realize. Her words cut through me like ice. What do you mean? I asked, my voice trembling. What are you talking about? Who are you? What do you want from me? She didn't answer at first, only looked at me with a strange mixture of pity and something else I couldn't quite place. You are a part of something that started long before you were born. It's not about what you think. It's about the path your life was always meant to follow. My mind swirled. I don't understand, I whispered. Why me? Why now? The man's voice was gentle now, but there was a cold edge to it, like steel beneath velvet. You're here because you have no choice. You've been part of this for years, and now it's time for you to see what you really are, a piece of a much larger puzzle. He paused, his eyes flicking briefly to Emily. You've been living your life as if you were in control, but you weren't. You've been part of something bigger, something that's been guiding you to this moment. And now that you're here, you have two choices: accept what is, or fight against it. I stared at him, barely able to process the words. A larger puzzle? Something bigger? How could any of this be true? I was just a regular guy, a man with a wife, a job, a home. Nothing about me screamed important. Nothing about my life was extraordinary. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words caught in my throat. My mind was racing, my heart hammering in my chest, as though I was on the edge of some terrible revelation. The man stepped closer, his voice a low murmur, like he was letting me in on some dark secret. It's time for you to make your choice. You can continue to deny it, to live in ignorance, or you can step into the truth. But the truth comes at a price. The weight of his words sank in, and in that moment, I understood. This wasn't just some crazy situation. This wasn't a random encounter. It was all connected. It was all leading to this. And the choice I was about to make, whether I liked it or not, would define everything that followed. I swallowed hard, my mind churning with fear and confusion. There was no way out now. The storm had already broken, and the only thing left to do was to face the consequences of the choices that had already been made for me. I took a shaky breath, knowing deep down that this was the moment that would change everything. My life, my understanding of who I was, had just shattered into pieces. And now, I had to put those pieces together, even if the truth was darker than I could ever have imagined. I'll face it, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I'll face whatever this is. The man smiled, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was the smile of someone who knew that the hardest part was yet to come. Good, he said simply, and in that moment, I realized that everything was about to change. Forever. The door to the truth had been opened. The room felt like it was closing in on me, the air thick with tension and the weight of the decisions that were swirling in my mind. As soon as I spoke those words, I'll face it, it was like a door I didn't even know existed swung wide open, and everything I'd been living for, everything I thought I knew, was exposed for what it truly was: a lie. The man's smile didn't falter. There was no hint of joy, no pride in his expression. He simply nodded, as though my decision was nothing more than the expected response. Emily, standing behind him now, didn't look at me with pity anymore. She looked at me with something else. Understanding? No, that wasn't it. It was something darker, something far more unsettling. You've made the right choice, the man said, his voice low and deliberate. But understand this, there's no turning back. Once you know the truth, it will change everything. You won't be able to unsee it. You won't be able to forget. I nodded slowly, but my mind was a whirlwind of confusion. What truth? What was it that I didn't know? It was as if they were speaking in riddles, hinting at something far bigger than myself, something that had been weaving its way into my life long before I even knew it. Where do we start? I asked, my voice shaking slightly. There was a part of me that still wanted to scream, to fight, to escape. But that part of me was small, fading, drowned out by the curiosity, the desperate need for answers. The man stepped back, his eyes never leaving mine, and he waved a hand toward the room as if inviting me to come closer. Emily, without a word, moved to the side, leaving me alone in front of him. The silence between us stretched, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I could feel every nerve in my body on high alert, every muscle tensed as if bracing for impact. You've been living in a carefully constructed reality, he began, his words measured, almost too calm for the magnitude of what he was saying. A reality built by forces that most people would never even understand. You think your life has been yours to control, but the truth is, you've been a part of something much larger. His words weren't new, but the way he said them made my skin crawl. He spoke as if he was unveiling the very fabric of my existence, as if everything I had thought was real was nothing but a mirage. I shook my head, trying to hold on to something tangible. No, I'm just a normal guy. I don't get it. I haven't been a part of anything. I don't even know who you are. Why are you telling me this? Why now? Emily spoke then, her voice quiet but carrying an undercurrent of certainty. Because now you're ready to know. Because everything has led to this moment. I swallowed hard. The words she spoke felt like they were carving out the foundation beneath me, leaving me with nothing to stand on. What do you mean, ready to know? Ready to know what? The man let out a small sigh, and the corner of his mouth twitched, as if he was both amused and disappointed by my resistance. The truth about the choices you've made, he said. The truth about who you really are. You're not just a man living his life. You're a part of a much older story. A story that's been written long before you were born, and it's a story that's been pulling you along whether you knew it or not. The room seemed to grow colder, and I could feel a chill creeping up my spine. My breath came in shallow bursts as his words settled deep into my bones. A story written long before I was born? What was he talking about? What was this? Some kind of conspiracy? Emily looked at me now, and there was no doubt in her eyes. It's not a conspiracy. It's fate. Your fate. And the fate of those around you. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to run. To leave. But my feet were rooted to the floor, my mind locked in place as if paralyzed by the enormity of what they were saying. The man stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper, but still sharp, like a blade. You've been chosen. You're part of something that goes beyond your understanding, beyond your control. I took a step back, trying to grasp what he was saying. Chosen for what? What the hell does that even mean? Chosen for what? Chosen to be a part of a very specific design, he said, his eyes narrowing. A design that has been set in motion for generations. You were never meant to live a normal life. Not really. Your life was always going to be part of something bigger, and you've been playing your part without even knowing it. My mind was spinning, my world unraveling with every word. I couldn't make sense of any of this. I had been living my life, trying to build something solid, something real. And now these people, these strangers, were telling me that everything I thought I knew was a lie. I was a part of something. A part of what? The man continued, almost as if he had expected me to say something, but I was too lost in his words to speak. You've been following a path, one that was laid out for you long before you had a say in it. The decisions you've made, the people you've met, the relationships you've formed, it's all part of a carefully crafted plan. The weight of those words landed hard, and I felt my knees shake. Carefully crafted plan. My life, my choices had been planned for me. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me, and I was falling, spiraling into a reality that didn't make sense. Stop, I said, my voice breaking. Stop. This isn't possible. I don't care about some design or whatever you're talking about. My life is mine. It's real. You're lying. He shook his head, his eyes darkening. You don't have a choice anymore. The design is real, and it's unfolding whether you like it or not. His words hung in the air like a heavy fog, and the truth of them began to sink in. The reality of what he was saying, no matter how impossible it seemed, started to take root in my mind. What if everything really had been a lie? What if the choices I thought were mine had always been controlled by something, someone else? Suddenly, I felt the ground beneath me shift. My heart raced in my chest, but I couldn't make my legs move. What now? The truth was here. It was unfolding, just as he said, and I had no idea if I was ready to face it. The man stepped back, his eyes scanning me with an unreadable expression. You've made your choice, he said quietly. Now, it's time to see what happens next. And with that, the door to my life, the one I had so carefully built, swung wide open. And everything I thought I knew about myself, about the world, was about to change forever. For a moment, everything felt suffocating, as if the world had shrunk down to this single, defining moment. The weight of the man's words hung heavy in the air. I felt trapped in a spiral of confusion and dread, caught in a story that wasn't my own. The truth, the real truth, was out there, just beyond my reach. But then, something shifted inside me. The more I stood there, feeling the cold weight of their words pressing in, the more I realized that this wasn't the end of my story. It wasn't a trap. I had been given a choice, a chance to step into something far greater than I had ever imagined. Yes, the path had been set before me long ago, but it didn't mean I couldn't still choose my direction. The man and Emily stood silently, waiting for my next move, as though expecting me to crumble under the pressure. But something inside me sparked, a flicker of determination that refused to be extinguished. I looked at both of them, at Emily's resigned expression, at the man's calculating gaze, and I took a deep breath, my heart beating steady and strong. You're right, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I've been living in the dark, and now the truth is in front of me. But it's not just about fate or design. It's about what I choose to do with it. And I'm not going to let anyone, no matter how powerful, tell me that I have no say in my future. The man's eyes narrowed, and Emily seemed to hesitate for a moment before nodding, a flicker of something, maybe approval, passing across her face. You're wrong about one thing. I continued, my voice gaining strength with every word. This isn't just about following some preordained path. It's about creating my own path, even if I have to start from scratch. I can't change the past, but I sure as hell can shape my future. For the first time, the man's expression softened, just a little. It was as if he was considering something, measuring my words. Emily, too, seemed less guarded, her shoulders relaxing as if she, too, had been waiting for me to understand something I had finally grasped. You're not alone in this, Emily said quietly, her voice a bit warmer than before. You don't have to fight against it. You don't have to run anymore. Embrace it, and you'll see things you never thought possible. The man stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. You've made your choice, he repeated, but this time, there was no menace in his voice. Only a sense of quiet respect. You've chosen to fight for your own life, to forge your own way, and for that, we respect you. I looked at the two of them, then at the world outside the window, the world that still seemed the same, but I knew it wasn't. It could never be the same again, and that was okay. I was done being a passenger in my own life. I was taking control, taking responsibility for the choices that lay ahead. As the tension slowly dissolved, I felt the burden on my chest lighten. I had chosen to step into the unknown, but now, it didn't seem so terrifying. It seemed full of potential. The truth, whatever it was, no longer felt like a curse. It felt like an opportunity. I turned toward the door, the place where this strange chapter had begun, and I realized that, in a way, it was also where it would end. But not in defeat. I wasn't walking away from my life. I was walking towards something new, something more. I didn't know what it was yet, but for the first time, I felt ready to face it head on. I looked back at Emily and the man, smiling softly. Thank you, I said, for showing me the truth. But now it's my turn. My life, my choice. They nodded, and with a final, understanding glance, they stepped back, disappearing into the shadows of the room. I stood alone now, in the quiet space I had always known, but it felt different, empowered, open. For the first time, I realized that my life was not a series of random events. It was a story that I was writing, and no one else had the pen. As I walked out the door and into the world beyond, I knew that the path ahead would be challenging. But I was no longer afraid. The truth wasn't something that could break me. It had only made me stronger. And so, my journey began. Not one that was dictated by anyone else, but one that was entirely my own. The future was mine to shape. And for the first time, I felt free.